I want everybody to say, talk to me then, what? 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 Lay, talk to me then, what? Talk to me then, what?
Welcome back. This is how we are keeping ourselves warm. When I say we, I mean my coffee lovers. So if you love coffee, please like and subscribe. Coffee, cappuccino flavor. If you know, you know. Right. I just had one of the most heartbreaking debates. Like, this is a sad debate to have, right? And at some point, because of the person I was talking to, I had to end up making how am I going to put this? I had to reach a conclusion that would at least make us continue respecting each other, and also for the sake of peace. Like, it was a sad debate to have, but honestly, I think we have to. There's certain things we can blame for this. First of all, and most importantly, abuse is abuse. I don't care what is being abused. Abuse is abuse, and it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable at all. Now, I'll get into my debate later because it was very sad and I don't want to start this episode. And I don't want the beginning of this episode to be sad. Like, I want to make my points first and then I get to the debate. Now, we understand there's this whole GBV, gender-based violence. Yes. I know there's different types of abuse and violence and whatever, right? So, men shouldn't be abusing women. Also, women shouldn't be abusing men. Yes, somehow society forgets that women can actually abuse men. Men shouldn't abuse men, women shouldn't abuse women, and also parents shouldn't abuse children, right? But also there are some children who happen to make life hard for their parents. So parents end up saying they're being abused by their children. It happens. It's just that it's not talked about, but it happens. And then also, animals shouldn't be abused. I know there are certain laws that favor that, but humans shouldn't abuse animals. Now, obviously, I can't say animals shouldn't abuse humans. But I mean, if we were to be realistic, sorry about that, an alarm for something I have to do later. if you understand biology, there's a predator and then there's a prey. Predator, prey. I think you know where I'm going with this, right? You know where I'm going with this. There are some humans who kill animals just for the sake of killing them. They go hunting. So if I'm not mistaken, it's a sport now. Not quite sure. I've never actually paid attention to that space. But yeah, the people who hunt animals for fun or for sport. But I'm not gonna dive deep into something that I can't really go in depth on, right? So, but I do know that, but there are also animals who eat humans because they have to survive. Now, what does that mean? So you must understand animals can eat humans to survive, but you shouldn't understand when humans are hunting animals for sport. If animals could talk, wouldn't they say, no, we're eating humans for sport to see how many humans can you eat? Like, right? So we're done with that. Now let's get to the human on human abuse. And I'm going to start with parents and children. There's discipline, then there's abuse. I think that should be very simple to understand. Like, we don't have to explain. But now, because of society, now there's a line. There's discipline, and then once you cross this line, then it's abuse. Obviously, if you are sane, you can tell that, okay, now I think I've made a point now, right? So this is what I think. The reason why children are weak and as years go by, humans get weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. Because obviously there was this agenda that's still ongoing. I mean, now there's a bit of a break, but it's still ongoing. There's this agenda of making a certain gender weak, right? And I spoke about this in one of my previous episodes about which gender one is supposed to be weak and which gender is supposed to be strong versus the reality, right? But parents shouldn't feel the need to want to explain why they are disciplining their children. Not abusing, disciplining their children. Now, somehow we've got to the point where if you spank the child on the butt, that's abuse. Okay, if you hit them with the belt on the butt, that's abuse. I'm thinking to myself, as a parent, there's rules that you create or that were instilled in you when you were a child, and now you want to pass them on to your children because you are now the teacher and your child is now the student, right? But now for some reason you can't instill those rules or instill those values and morals properly, because if you get to the point where the child has crossed the line, now you have to think, if I discipline this child, it might be a whole court case. You might even go to jail for abuse. Right? So I think It's just that, unfortunately, this is unfortunate. Unfortunately, the law doesn't get rid of some of the laws. Like, they don't revisit some of the laws. Like, there's some laws from 1910 or 18 something that still apply to this generation. But then there's also a new law that's supposed to apply to this generation, and now it's a matter of which lawyer will be able to make a compelling case against the other lawyer so that their client, defendant or plaintiff, wins the case. Why don't you just have one law? And then, since society keeps changing, at least that's not even a good idea, because if we're complaining about how this generation is weaker than the old generation, then that means that the law has to only apply to this certain generation, which means there needs to be, whenever there's a new generation, then there has to be a new law that needs to be, it's just going to be a whole thing. But I think you get my point on why there should be one law that states clearly what needs to happen, right? And these laws must not apply to an agenda that society needs to follow or needs to believe, but it must be realistic. If your child tells you, "I'm not gonna do this," and if you force me to do this, if you command me to do this again, we are going to fight. Child tells you as a parent, wouldn't you think that child has crossed the line? Think about it. Since when is a child telling me why I'm wrong? Right? If you are so right, then move out. You are right, and I'm wrong. Move out then. Go have your own children and teach them what you need, what you want to teach them, because apparently your views are the only views any human should consider. That's not realistic. So you just came into this world, and immediately from 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 the second you were born, your views are your views are the ones that are most correct. Come, let's be realistic about things. If a person crosses a line, then basically, because they're fucking around, now they're gonna find out. So that's my stance on parents versus children, basically. And it's unfortunate that the clipping is gonna take all of this out of context and then somehow have to explain a clip when people no longer watch long form content to understand the whole context, right? But basically, there's disciplining a child and then there's abusing a child. Abusing a child, it's just being brutal. Like, there's just brutal violence. Like, why are you fighting with the child? Why are you punching the child? What? Right? So that's my position. And since we don't discipline children because the law prevents us from doing that, that basically means that a child can fuck around and they're just gonna continue fucking around. They're just gonna fuck around and fuck around and fuck around. Because if I discipline the child, what happens? I go to court. The child was wrong. The child crossed the line, right? So now, obviously, when you have a child, you have a son or a daughter. I understand. And depending on how you were taught and what morals and values were instilled in you, you obviously know that there's a certain way you can discipline a daughter, and then there's a certain way you can discipline a son. So there's a certain way you can discipline a boy, and there's a certain way you can discipline a girl, right? So of course, when you're disciplining, there's certain ways you can make a point. Like you can't just immediately when a child makes a mistake, now all of a sudden, boom, they're getting a spank. No. I mean, be realistic. Something called warnings. Even in jobs, you get a verbal warning, then you get a first written warning, second written warning, last written warning, and then a whole what you call this? After the whole process, you know the whole process until you get fired. Because you keep crossing the line. You keep fucking around. Now you're gonna find out what happens when you fuck around. Basically. So that's my stance on parents versus children, right? Men versus women. Again, there's making a point and then there's abuse. I don't promote violence of any sort. Yes, as a martial artist, there is absolutely no reason why a man should spar with a woman. Absolutely no reason why. I'm not going to say no because of this, because no. There's absolutely no reason why a man should spar with a woman. That's it. I mean, there's weight classes. So if you want, that's your fighter, your woman who's 50 kg, and you want them to spar a heavier person, and there's no other woman who's above her weight class. Now you're like, you know what? Spar with the man. No. No. So, right. I'm digressing. Men versus women. Now, I've never laid a hand on a woman. Never. And I don't intend on laying a hand on a woman. Right? Please consider the context. Right? Don't be dumb now and think, oh, it doesn't mean no. I've never laid a hand on a woman, and I don't intend on laying a hand on a woman. Right? So not a loss of words. So people like I mentioned earlier, there's fucking around and then there's finding out. Now, unfortunately, some men, and it's unfortunate because some will actually say, hey, I saw my father hit my mother, and I look up to my father. Right? So it's a general statement. I look up to my father. So all the good things and the bad things, obviously you'll see them, right? But that doesn't mean obviously you should continue. My father hit my mom, so I'm gonna hit my baby mama, I'm gonna hit my girlfriend, I'm gonna hit my wife, and so on and so forth. Or I'm just gonna hit a woman. No, it's wrong. Why are you hitting a woman? If you get, this is my view. If you get to a point where a woman, you've given enough warnings. You have given enough warnings that don't involve the use of hands or that don't involve violence. Let me put it like that. If you've gotten to the point where now the only way to get this over and done with is to lay hands on a woman. This is my opinion. If it gets to the point, leave that woman. Just leave her. Leave her. Because clearly, she wants to see, and this is the thing that men don't understand. Women actually test boundaries. They test their men. How dominant is this guy? Or, since he's a man, let's see how much of a man he really is. Isn't that amazing? They just keep poking and poking and poking and poking and poking and poking. There's a certain point when you poke a balloon, it's going to pop. For some reason, some women don't realize that when you poke a balloon, at some point it's going to pop. Right? It just, but again, there's a whole agenda behind that, so I understand. But getting to my point, as a man, you know for a fact once you pop what's going to happen. So if you've given out so many warnings, just leave her, because clearly she doesn't respect you and your warnings and your threats. Just leave her. Because if you lay hands on a woman, what do you think is going to happen to you in court? What do you think is going to happen in court? Right? I mean, now there's certain nations who are realistic about the whole thing. Like, they actually ask the right questions of what happened. They don't just like, oh, a man hit a woman, jail. No. Luckily, there's some nations who are realistic. Right? But, again, just so you don't find out because you're fucking around, just leave the woman. Leave her. Now, what do we say about the women who abuse men? Well, again, there's no respect. There's no respect. But I mean, again, I'm gonna keep mentioning this. There's a whole agenda behind this. If you're mature enough and you're sane enough, you know what agenda I'm referring to. But what do we say about the women who abuse men? Unfortunately, it just doesn't make sense why a woman is abusing a man. Like, why is a woman dominating a man? It just doesn't make sense. But it happens. Because unfortunately, some of our men are weak. Or they allow it. Because if they were to take a stand, or if they were to report it, if they report it, they get laughed at. They're like, oh, so you're not wearing the pants in the relationship. Like, it's already embarrassing that you're respecting the law. It's already embarrassing because you love that woman and you don't want to break up with her. Like, it's just so unfortunate. But again, if it gets to the point, leave her. What's so hard about leaving a woman and starting all over again? Just look at the population of, there's 8 billion of us. Now figure out or search which gender has more, how many men are there in the world and how many women are there in the world? You seriously think you're not going to find a woman that's better than the one who's wearing the pants in the relationship? So you can't develop yourself to the point where you can now attract women who are better than that woman who's wearing the pants in that relationship? Right? But also, why are we encouraging women abusing men? Why isn't that talked about? Why? Why isn't it talked about? And why doesn't the woman get the same punishment as the man when the man abuses a woman? Why doesn't the woman get the same punishment? Again, there's a whole agenda behind it. Like, I don't want to keep saying this, but I know for some reason, some stupid person is going to think, oh, don't you know that yes, I know there's a whole agenda behind it, but let's be realistic. Why aren't we asking these questions to the point where we don't have to keep referring back to the agenda? Why don't you just fight against the agenda? What's so hard about fighting against an agenda? Can you just stop being cowards for once and actually fight something that matters to you, right? So, women should stop abusing men, men should stop abusing women. What have I talked about? Men versus woman, woman versus man, parents versus children, men versus humans versus animals. Basically, abuse is abuse. But let's be realistic. There's this video of a guy who says, the more you fuck around, the more you find out. Why do you want to keep getting warnings to the point where you have to be fired? Why? That's my question. Now, the debate. The debate, I think I don't even need to talk about it because I've made my point. But basically, I was talking to a woman who, unfortunately, got into a relationship with the guy only to find out that at some point the guy is going to abuse her, unfortunately. And from the day it happened, not even from the day it happened, there was a point where she realized before it happened, before the first time it happened, that the next time the guy gets pissed off, it's going to happen. And then when she talked to me about it, I told her, okay, listen, I'm going to tell you this as a man. I'm not going to tell you this as a person that you know or try to be biased and try to pick sides. No. I'm going to tell you this as a man. Your intuition, woman's intuition is never wrong. That's their superpower. A woman's intuition is never wrong. So the fact that it crossed your mind that the next time this guy is pissed off, it's going to happen, I suggest that you just break it off. Because your intuition is now telling you, listen, it's about to happen. But because obviously I love him and I'm nothing without him, she's the type of woman. Once she's in a relationship with you, it's never crossing her mind that she's going to break up with you at some point. And obviously a woman doesn't get into a relationship knowing very well that I'm going to be abused and I'm going to live with it. So, as you know, or as you can tell from the story, she continued dating the guy and it happened. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times. Kept happening. And from the first time it happened, I told her, I don't want to be the guy who says, I told you so. But I told you, as a man, when your intuition tells you, as a woman, when your intuition tells you something, you should probably listen to it. 9.9 times out of 10, you should listen to it. And obviously, as a man, I don't know what happened, but there's a certain point where you fucked around and now you're about to find out, right? Now, obviously, this is a general statement. Now, there's obviously different scenarios and different cases, yes, of course. But in general, the more you fuck around, the more you find out, right? So, the story of how it led up to the guy ended up laying hands on her. She didn't tell the full story. until the third time it happened, where she was finally honest on what exactly led to the guy laying hands on her. As she was telling the story, she kind of pointed out that, okay, now I know how he reached the point. Now, this is the thing. My first question was, since he knew you were fucking around, why did you want to find out? I mean, your intuition warned you that you fucked around a lot now, and it's about to get worse. So it's either you're going to stop or leave. Well, that didn't happen. So then I told her, then we had a debate. And this debate, thank God, led her to breaking up with the guy. Because that was the whole point of me actually getting to that debate with her. Now, the reason why it was sad was because there was a point where they wanted to start a family, which obviously didn't happen, thank God, because now imagine being in someone's life, whether you like it or not. I mean, obviously there's co-parenting, you don't have to stay with each other for the kid to grow up. But I mean, at least that didn't happen. But it was sad because she had all these plans and dreams, and they all were dreams that included this guy. Because all the good things about the guy were really good things. It's just that this one bad thing overshined or overshadowed the good things, which is obviously the abusive part. Him being abusive, right? So even talking about it just takes me back, because now I'm thinking to myself, why didn't the guy just break up with the girl? But obviously, these dreams and goals weren't only her dreams and goals, it was their dreams and goals. So now, maybe the guy genuinely loved her, but I mean, she crossed the line and the guy was like, I've had enough of this. Now I'm laying hands on you. It's unfortunate. So, to end this episode, abuse is abuse. If your partner has fucked around a lot, so many times, just once you realize that you're about to reach the point, just leave the relationship. Whether you're a man or you're a woman, leave the relationship. But it's unfortunate because you can't advise someone who's in love with someone else basically to break up with that person. Because no matter how you put it, if all I see is me and her, you're disturbing the good thing that's happening.
I want everybody to say, talk to me, Ntenjwa.